everyone, welcome. You're watching a new edition of the Daily Scope. I'm your host, Caitlin Ahmedi. Joining us today in the studio with further analysis on what's headlining newspapers worldwide is President of the Assalamparty, Mr. Edde. Welcome.
Thank you.
But just before we start, let's take a quick look at the top stories in this following report by Miriam Holmberg.
A bomb exploded near a court complex in the Mbaba district of Giza, near the capital Cairo, as Egyptians prepared to vote in a constitutional referendum on Tuesday. Yet no casualties were reported. The referendum will mark the third time Egyptians have voted on constitutional arrangements since the historic uprising against former President Hosni Mubarak in January 2011, and the sixth time they have gone to the polls since his downfall. Egyptians are expected to turn out in big numbers and vote yes in the two-day referendum. Anti-government protesters moved to tighten their blockade around ministries in Bangkok on Tuesday, while major intersections in the capital remain blocked. Thai protest leader Suthep Thakksuban told thousands of his supporters on Tuesday that pressure upon the government of Yingluck Shinawatra would be increased. The Prime Minister, on her part, said she wanted to ensure a democratic system was kept in place and invited leaders of anti-government protesters and political parties to enter discussions. The 11th round of China-U.S. bilateral investment treaty negotiations began in Shanghai on Tuesday morning. During the negotiations, the two countries are expected to discuss global restructuring of trade and investment and the global investment rules to the China-U.S. bilateral investment treaty. Residents of the Iraqi capital Baghdad on Tuesday were once again waking up to the aftermath of terrorist attacks, after a series of car bombs on Monday evening killed at least 25 people. Coinciding with a visit to the Iraqi capital by UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, the attacks occurred in the mainly Shiite Muslim districts of Baghdad. Ban told a news conference, after talks with Iraqi President Nouri al-Maliki, that he was concerned about the spiraling bloodshed that killed nearly 9,000 people in 2013 and urged Iraqi leaders to deal with its underlying causes. U.S. President Barack Obama, during an Oval Office appearance with Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy on Monday, urged Congress to resist the temptation to approve new economic sanctions against Iran, and said lawmakers instead should give diplomacy and peace a chance to work. Obama also spoke about Spain's unemployment and economy, and while he praised the difficult structural reforms Spain has undertaken, he said they were necessary.
Now let's begin our tour with the headlines in the Middle East. From Egypt's Al-Ahram. Constitutional poll, Egyptians vote on roadmap for the future. Arman Tribune. U.S.-Russia call for Syria ceasefire zone before talks. Damascus warns against setting conditions for peace talks. The Kuwait Times. Amir appeals for aid for Syrians affected by war. UN seeks $6.5 billion to tackle worst humanitarian crisis. Gulf News. Lift Iran sanctions and everyone will benefit. Mohammed says he believes Tehran's nuclear program is for peaceful purposes in a wide-ranging interview with BBC. The Turkish Hurriyet Daily News. President intervenes in crisis and meets leaders. President Gül steps in for a solution to the ongoing crisis, separately meeting with opposition leaders and the Prime Minister on the issue. And the Sharq al-Awsat. Iraq, UN Secretary General calls for dialogue in Anbar province. Okay, well, Mr. Rajer, we're going to start in the Middle East now. The Al-Ahram actually said that Egyptians vote on roadmap for the future. Let me start by asking you, do you believe the constitutional referendum will pass?
Yes, I hope it will pass with over 60 to 70%. We have known the experience of people in power by voting to go and run and vote. We have seen it in Iraq in spite of bombings. We have seen it in Iran, the election of President Rouhani overwhelmingly in the first tour. In Egypt, it's in fact a double vote. It's a vote confirming the coup that Americans and Westerns consider as a coup d'etat against the elected government of Morsi and the Brotherhood. The legitimacy of that coup is the tens of millions who went into the streets supporting that change. But that legitimacy on the streets was not confirmed by a vote. This vote will confirm the legitimacy of change and will probably set the stage for having eventually a presidential election where Sisi may be tempted to be a candidate because he will be easily elected.
Exactly.
My problem with that is that I would wish to see Sisi resign first and not run as a military man.
Okay, and how would that be different?
The difference is, you know, you have in many places in the world, in America, Eisenhower, you have in Israel leaders who were military who became prime ministers. But you don't use the military as your political party and being in position of the head of the military. If you run for office, then it's a military regime. And that line should be very clear to have Sisi get the respect and the support of the world democratic community.
Okay, well, if Sisi takes over, could that show another thing like Morsi did? He was a military that took over. Could we see the same?
In the case of Morsi was elected properly, democratically. It is the way he governed that had him lose the popular support. Probably he should not have been so dependent of the Murshid, who looked to me as being, to a great extent, a very limited man. Morsi would have been more the man of himself. He would have been had more wisdom. He would have had the chance to be accepted. Look in Turkey, for example. President Gül is still today, in spite of the weakness of Erdogan, is still one of the most popular men in the Middle East. It is how you behave. It's not enough to be democratically elected. It is you need to also behave with respect to others that have been elected, to have them participate at governments. You can have a majority government, you can have a minority opposition. That's a good game, because when you elect a candidate, you are betting as people that he is good, that his promises will be respected. It's, according to the British philosopher of democracy, Karl Popper, it is only a bet. It is when you go back to the people and you ask them for their vote another time, then they will judge you. Then they will say, we were happy, we were unhappy. In the case of Morsi, it went too far, too rapidly probably. This is why we had a resistance from the world community to support the change, to support the coup. And the Egyptian people did not understand the European and American position expressing reservation toward that change. Now, Morsi is not the kind of pharaonic dictator. And plus, you can have civilians who have pharaonic tendencies. But the Sisi needs to make a step before he runs for election. First, he leave office. Second, he announce that he is running and what is his program. I did not like very much him saying, for example, I will run if the people ask me. That's too cheap. That's too much of a cliche. It lacks credibility. Okay, no, Mr. Rajer, it is your obligation, if you want to run, to say that you want to exercise power, that you would respect democracy, that will be your program, and then you go for the election as a civilian.
Okay, Mr. Raja, was it a surprise to you that after the bomb attack that targeted the polling station right before the voting opened, that we had a large number of Egyptians that flowed into the polling stations?
No, because really the people of Egypt won't change. And the constitution is a guarantee of less Islamic brotherhood and more democratic, open society that looks more like the reality of Egypt. Egypt has been in the Middle East, we should always remember. It was with Lebanon the leading renaissance in literature, in cinemas, in arts at the beginning of the century. Even at thinking Islam in a very moderate way, in a very progressive way.
Okay, well, Mr. Raja, let's cross over to the Amman Tribune. They said that U.S. Russia called for Syria's ceasefire zone before the talks, while Damascus warned against setting conditions for the peace talks. Do you believe a ceasefire zone is achievable, especially with the current situation with the infighting in Syria? And if so, would it push the peace talks towards being successful?
First, I think it's a moral obligation for the U.S. and Russia, who were sponsoring those talks, to ask for that, because what's happening in Syria is a real problem for the international public opinion and the world community, doing nothing about something by saying it's a civil war, let them kill each other. That is hurting the image, hurting historically, it's morally unacceptable. Now, a ceasefire, we're familiar in Lebanon during the Lebanese war, too many ceasefires who were never more than very limited ceasefire in limited places for limited time. But to try to do it is morally necessary. Now they can at least ask for a ceasefire toward the civilians. Anything that is aimed at civilians can be at least stopped. Second, they can at least allow access to places where humanitarian aid needs to go.
Exactly. Actually, the humanitarian aid, the Kuwait Times said that the Dubai Emir, of course, Sheikh Mohammed, appealed for aid for Syrians affected by war. Nearly 3 years into the Syrian war, 2.4 million people have become refugees in neighboring countries. How different is it now? Do you think that this aid, we've had a lot of aid, but $6.5 billion, do you think this aid would actually reach these Syrian refugees? And if so, how would it benefit them?
It's very difficult to have the full aid reach the refugees anywhere in the world. It needs a mechanism, it needs a lot of international cooperation and regional cooperation. Yet the money is there, let's spend it, or start to spend it at least. Syria needs it. But the other aspect of things is that when we are talking about Syrian refugees, there are Syrian refugees in Jordan, there are Syrian refugees in Turkey, and probably some in Iraq. Many went to the Gulf, you know, the well-off. Many went to Europe, also the very well-off.
And Lebanon, of course.
The problem is in Lebanon. Because in Lebanon, more than 3 million probably may end up also in Lebanon as soon as what's going on is not resolved, and it won't be resolved as soon, and some major battles that are expected happens. What would happen to Lebanon? First, you will have immediately a disruption in the balance of demography and in the balance of power within the Lebanese community. That disruption can be devastating to the very existence of the Lebanese coexistence and the Lebanese formula. That's a big risk. If many of those are coming with and carrying the negative feelings, with a mazhabi, a denominational negative feeling toward a community or another community, that would create a civil war, not among Lebanese, but a civil war among a part of Lebanon and the refugees coming from Syria that become as numerous as all the Lebanese together, with arms, with feeling of revenge, with feeling of frightness to do it. That is the most dangerous risk. Yesterday I had for 2 hours the BBC only on that subject. What would be the risk for Lebanon if that civil war in Syria keeps going on the way it's going on?
Okay, Mr. Rajeh, in the Gulf news, it said that lift Iran sanctions and everyone will benefit. Could we see the nuclear deal carried out in your opinion, or do you think the U.S. will impose further sanctions leading to its failure?
Okay, now, in Iran, first, I respect Sheikh Mohammed. I am an admirer of his vision and the ability to turn into part of the desert to something like Singapore, better than Monte Carlo, the dream of Lebanon, etc. I understand also that he calls for lifting sanction, and definitely Dubai has been the least rigorous dealing with respecting the sanctions, especially when it comes to the banking community and to other investments. Many Iranians are investors in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi in the real estate business and buyers in the real estate business for the last few years. All of this is understood. But let me take it from another corner, not only from the economical corner that interests probably Dubai and Sheikh Mohammed. The other corner is this. There is today, in Iran itself, a big question put on the table. And it was expressed by the writing of President Rouhani for 2014. I just read it recently. His priorities were defined as lifting the sanctions, normalizing relationship with the world, becoming a force of good, reassuring its neighbors, establishing the best relationship with the Saudis and with other Gulf nations. That means here we have an Iran that is presenting a really new face, fully acceptable to the Arab world and to the Muslim world and to the international community. If that vision receives enough support from the most powerful figure, that is the Wali al-Faqih, if with the public opinion and Wali al-Faqih and some other leaders who are part of the establishment, Rouhani would have the backing, then it will be an obligation for whoever is negotiating from the Western side and from the Arab side to make every effort to back Rouhani, to support Rouhani, to make that change. Because that change applies not only to the nuclear. Iran has a right, like every other country, have the right to what Iran is saying is the civilian nuclear technology. And a draft of agreement was already available in 2005 in a negotiation conducted by Rouhani himself between 2003 and 2005. Then Ahmadinejad was elected, then things went wrong. Okay. It may not be his fault, maybe other people's fault. I don't want to judge details. We don't know.
Okay. Mr. Rajeh, we're just running out of time here. Let's cross over to the Hurriyet Daily News. The president intervened in crisis and meets leaders. This was their headline. If there is no stop to the corruption probe that has shaken the government before the local elections in March are coming up, do you think in any possible way will Prime Minister Erdogan's government be jeopardized?
I think the real reason is not the scandal. We know in this part of the world that corruption is almost institutionalized. Corruption is only the tool, and judiciary is only a tool in a fight within the same clan who brought Erdogan to government. Erdogan now is opposed by the people who were the most relevant supporter of the Islamic movement that came to power, especially after the first attempt for the Brotherhood in Turkey to take power, that of Hizb al-Rafah, was booted out by the military. And now Erdogan is facing someone of a great stature, President Gül. I think the president will win. I think Erdogan is on his way out.
Okay, so he is in jeopardy at this position now.
Yes, because he has lost in his own base. It is not another opposition coming from the left or coming from the old traditional parties. No, it is coming from within his own clan. And when you are divided among your own clan and you are challenged by a president who is respected widely in Turkey and internationally, I think the president has a better chance to win over Erdogan. Probably he committed that fault of arrogance. Arrogance is the enemy of intelligence.
Okay, well, with that, we're going to please stay tuned as we take a quick break.
Beyond the lines, beyond the surface. Depth, clarity, substance. Beyond the discourse.
Beyond politics, beyond the shallowness of everyday politics.
Welcome back to the Daily Scope. Now let's cross over to the Israeli entity's top stories. The Jerusalem Post. Biden, two-state solution, only chance for Midi stability. Haaretz. Ariel Sharon laid to rest. Former prime minister was complex man who left his fingerprints on Israel's political and military affairs for decades. Yednot Ahranot. In the Arab world, Sharon was an admired enemy. Okay, Mr. Roger, the Jerusalem Post said that Biden says two-state solution only chance for Mideast stability. Over and over, we've heard these so-called peace talks. However, till now, nothing positive has come out of them. Why is that? Because in your opinion, do you agree that it's because that the Israeli entity continues over and over to build settlements?
First, because of American neglect of dealing with the subject. Remember that throughout the mandate of President George W. Bush, the priorities were the after 9/11 wars, the war against terror here and there, Iraqi war with all its problems, and that was great for Ariel Sharon. He did not have to deal with any American pressure. Now, I still need to note here that at the end of his life, before not his death, but his political life, Ariel Sharon believed in peace and in the two-state solutions, which is a very important thing today if a deal can be reached on that base. But there are very complex issues. It's not only one issue. Secretary Kerry is very impressive in the way he has taken that file all by himself, neglected by Secretary Clinton because of her presidential ambition, neglected by President Obama until today. In the environment of the president at the White House, according to what I know,
Yes.
They are laughing secretly at Secretary Kerry's huge efforts But I believe, and I have said it already 2 months ago, that there is a chance to reach a deal. Today, Netanyahu may be able to strike an interim deal that is good enough to be acceptable by the Palestinians and good enough to be accepted by a majority of his colleagues. The only problem he has is one of the blocs that supports him, which is Israel Beituna. They have 12 members of parliament, and worse than that, they have a base or sympathy within his own Likud party. It's a problem Ariel Sharon faced by creating a new party, neglecting the Likud party and creating the Kadima party, which Zibi Levni assumed after that. That means here there is some Israeli politics that needs also American help and support and pressure. The Jewish community internationally needs also to pay a better attention to peace. When it comes to the Arab world, probably this time, if that fails, it will be because of the Arab side.
Because of the Arab side?
Because of the Arab side not taking the opportunity of peace and for any reason related either to the rivalry between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, for different other reasons now in what's going on in the area, they may fail, they may, I hope they won't, they may fail to meet the Secretary Kerry effort and pressure on Netanyahu to reach a deal.
But
the
Mr.
deal is doable.
But the Israeli entities over and over, they violated this deal. This deal says no more settlement units. They continuously keep adding, as according to the UN, they're illegal settlements because they're being built on occupied land.
Yes, the settlements are illegal according not only to UN, to every Western power,
exactly,
including.
So if they keep building, there's no chance for peace talks. So in this way, the Israeli entity is not even given a chance for peace talks.
Yes, yes and no. Let me say what is yes and no. Yes, first. Remember, in 1982, you don't remember, you were not born. In 1982, there were a chance of peace. The Reagan Initiative, with the war in Lebanon, with Sharon moving in, etc. There were a chance. Arafat booted out, etc. Booted out by both the Israeli and in Tripoli the Syrians. But anyway, he ends up out and weakened and everything. At that time, there were only 35,000 settlers. Today, we are over 270,000 settlers only in Jerusalem, in the extension of Jerusalem, and as much in the West Bank. It means time works against the Palestinian interest. This is why today what we are talking about, we are talking about exchanging land. That means some, but probably they would be like 100,000 settlers who would have to be removed from their place. If that happens, it's more than a coup when it comes to politics, because these are swing voters who can bring down a prime minister. The more time passes without stopping settlements, we have a problem. But if you are negotiating, you can stop settlement. If you stop negotiating, like what happens during the mandate of President Bush and until today with the mandate of President Obama, we have a real problem because settlement will go on. This is why it's so important to negotiate for the sake of negotiation, to make a step further, but always every step needs to deal with stopping settlement seriously.
So hopefully another deal will be taken there. Now, moving over to Europe. From the UK, The Independent. UK's sovereignty at risk from EU-US trade deal. From Independent. Fracking bribes for all. The Ukrainian Kiev Post. Doug Bandeau, the U.S. should stay out of Ukraine's fight. Okay, Mr. Roger, the Independent said that UK sovereignty at risk from EU-US trade deal. Why is the UK in danger of surrendering judicial independence to multinational corporations?
That is not the way I would interpret it.
Go ahead.
The European community, it's a community that is now in crisis because of the crisis of the euro. The British people were never really enthusiastic to be integrated into a Europe where Germany is so dominant. And it has become today over-dominant thanks to its power with the euro. Because the euro is a new D-mark. It is not the new franc or the new sterling. Great Britain loves to keep its flexibility and its sovereignty. It's an island. And its independence. There are so many Eurosceptics now in England, but there are so many now across Europe. Any deal between the US and the European community would affect to a limited way Great Britain, but would force the new leadership in Great Britain to pay a better attention to its historical Atlantic relationship with the US. A relation that has been neglected in crisis since after the cozy relation between George Bush and the Prime Minister of England, who was treated like the puddy of George Bush.
Yes.
Prime Minister Blair. This is why I think it's only a passing way, and Great Britain would remain the #1 ally in Europe of the United States of America for historical reasons.
Okay, well, and now sliding over to Asia. The Korea Times. South Korea emerge as U.S. pivot to Asia. China Daily. Bangkok unrest hurts major protests and tourism industry. And the Pakistan Observer. Breakthrough on Kashmir expected.
The greatest news is the breakthrough.
Okay, well, Mr. Rajeh, let's go over to the Pakistan Observer. They said that the breakthrough on Kashmir is expected. As we know, if there's a breakthrough on this long debated border between India and Pakistan, would it be positive signals for peace in South Asia?
To have peace, you need more stability in Pakistan itself. But definitely, India and Pakistan can only benefit tremendously from resolving this problem. It won't be easy. It won't be easy. Also, what's going on between Islam and Hinduism as a religious crisis. Remember, we are in the 21st century, which is a century of the fight among religions. In the 20th century, we had fight among the non-religious people. If you are capitalist or communist, here it's a fight, it's a conflict between religious ideologies. They should never go to war because of that rivalry. That rivalry should unite, not divide. This is why it will cool down the Hindu-Muslim question. It will help Pakistan. It will help also in Pakistan the moderates to overcome the extremists who are in the army, in the intelligence community. Pakistan initially was not a very Islamic religious place. Shia minority in Pakistan governed Pakistan. When Benazir Bhutto, her father, was in power, they were never criticized because they were Shia. They were criticized for one reason or another. That means you have a different environment in that part of the world that we need to save. Let the conflicts be about economics, be about commercial rivalries, but not about another religious war. We're really tired, and we are afraid that religious war can spread like fire and destroy the century.
Okay, and finally, across the Pacific to the USA. The Washington Times. Wall Street soars, Main Street hurts. Obama policies fail to turn trends, damaging middle class. The Times Tribune. Falling short, enrollment numbers for Obamacare below expectations. More older Americans sign up. And the Washington Post. Insurance sign-up by young adults lag. Premium could jump if more don't enroll. Okay, Mr. Roger, the Washington Times said that Wall Street soars while the Main Street burns. Obama's policies are failing to turn trends, damaging the middle class. Is there any possible way Obama could bounce back from that?
No. Obama is done. He will be lame duck right after the next interim election. He probably will lose, in addition of having lost already the House, he would lose the Senate. Obamacare became Obama disaster. Now, but let's go back to the macroeconomic issue. The case of Obama is done, to be honest with you. That you don't have to be with him or against him. The man failed. He failed internationally, he failed nationally. When it comes to Wall Street, one thing we need to keep in mind, every time the economy is doing well, there is always a fear of inflation, and automatically the central bank raises interest rates. When the central bank raises interest rates, Wall Street comes down because the income you get from your stock become less profitable and attractive. You get better income from your bonds or from your cash investment. This is why, if the economy is not doing well, it's normal that Wall Street does better. But to a certain extent, that means if there is a catastrophe, if there is a recession, and I don't think it is a recession, it is simply a stagnation. It's not even a stagflation. That means there is no a stagnation of the economy combined with inflation. On the other hand, we have to also to consider why Wall Street is happy. Wall Street is happy also with the new governor, a lady governor who is as bright and as competent as Bernanke was. Bernanke saved the world and America from another depression like in the 30s, because as an economist he was the #1 specialist worldwide in what happened in the 30s. And he succeeded on that. Now the successor is a very conservative, at the same time a very disciplined and highly qualified leader that provides to the investors enough confidence to support Wall Street.
Okay, well, President of the Assalamparty, Mr. Edde, thank you very much for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you. Well, viewers, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for our show today. From the Daily Scope team, thank you very much for watching.